Hi there, it's Paul here from Volaticus Films. How are you doing? Good to see you again. This time the return part of the flight from Couchervel to Le Vasseur. Previous flight we flew into one of the most unusual airports in the world, Couchervel, set on a mountain. Actually the runway runs up a mountain, so it's quite a unique approach. This time will be the return flight, so hopefully all things will go well. We're in the Alps, the weather's nice, light winds straight down the runway, which is what we want. Okay, so we're using ForeFlight for navigation on the route, just starting at the Couchervel, and then going to pick up an airway fix Gigas, and then direct to Anvar, and then direct into Le Vasseur. Okay, which takes us down the valley there, which is what we want to do. So see, the route takes us over the mountains. So a fairly short flight today. Hopefully no eventualities. We are single engine, as you know. We're flying the Cirrus Jet single engine aircraft with a ballistic parachute, which is our salvation in the event of an engine failure or a problem. So let's not worry too much about that. Let's get inside the cockpit and set up the route. Just give me a moment to organise the screens a bit. So first thing, delete the previous flight plan. I have been flying elsewhere. Let us go in and set up our destination. So I set some keyboard shortcuts for this. It makes it a bit easier. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do is go and enter those airway fixes. So Gigas is the first one. Which is 8 miles from Couchervel, which is about right. And the next one is Anvar, A-M-V-A-R. There it is. That's just under 22 miles, and then from there to Le Vasseur is just under 8, and that all sounds perfectly fine. And in fact, if I cycle through the FMS, you can actually see the route before your eyes. So let's just close the flight plan part of it, and we can adjust the range and more or less zoom out to see the whole route there. So you see we're just passing mostly over the mountains and then into the valley, and we land at Le Vasseur. Okay. So I need to just change the size of the screen, because the pop-out screens, because they're a little big, based on the fact that I've actually downsized the resolution of the screen for this recording a little bit. So let's go ahead and have some fun and games with this a little bit each time. Hopefully it'll stop playing me around. There we go, that's better. Okay, the screen's set up. That's about right. Okay, and I've got keyboard shortcuts to get rid of those as well. Just have a quick check on the fuel. Looks like we are on just under half tanks, and that's absolutely fine because it's a very short journey. So I'm happy with that. We'll assume we've done the walk around. Just have a quick check around. In fact, don't get very good side wing view, so I set up some keyboard shortcuts for that. It really is a beautiful day here in Couchervel. Okay, make sure the brakes are set, and they are, and we can start the engine. looks like we've got a good start there. And the EGT stabilising, which is great. So we're 6,700, that's the altitude of Couchervel. We are going to go to 12,000 feet. So let's bring up the pop-out screens for that. Set the altitude a bit higher. 12,000. Set the route up already, that's still in there. So shortly after takeoff we'll engage with that route. So using ForeFlight on the iPhone today, I normally use that on an iPad. I am trying it out on the iPhone. A good example would be packed the iPad into the case, it's in the back of the plane, go to reach for it and can't find it, but it does actually run on an iPhone. But it's not completely the same feature set, of course, because it's a smaller screen. But we're going to try it out today. It's my first time using the iPhone for navigation. Okay, everything's looking good. Quick look around. What I'm going to do is a turn to the right, and need quite a bit of power because it's quite uphill. Just watch that left wing. And as soon as we can, quick dab of the brakes. We really need to use all the runway available here. Let's just hold it there a moment. I don't think there's a single flat bit of this airport. So you're either on the brakes or you're almost full engine power. So you can actually see you can actually see the gradient on the instrumentation, the pilot display. Okay, there's not a lot that I need to do. I just need to check the fuel's still good. I'm going to just raise the elevator trim slightly outside of the takeoff area. As I say, that tends to work out much better in this aircraft. It's just a little too low once we engage the autopilot. Let's have a look at the other things. So transponder, we are going to stick that onto VFR, and we need to put that onto, we'll stick that onto altitude at this point. So it is an IFR flight, but I'm not going to mess around with that. So that is all set up. Everything else is okay. The generators are on. Stick the landing light on as we are about to go for it. No icing risk today. Quick peek at the windsock, and you can see it's fairly light. It's fairly light, but it is down the runway, which is great, which is what we want. I think it was almost impossible for it to be any other way. It could either be very light or down the runway. It's partly why they've built the runway where it is. Okay, well, there's not likelihood of anything coming from the left, apart from maybe some out of control skier. So let's get ready. Now there is a helicopter that's been hovering over the runway since I started up here, and they don't tend to move, so I'm going to have to ignore that. Certainly not waiting for me anyway. No, we definitely don't want to waste runway here. So I'm going to be flying towards and underneath that helicopter, which is probably not the most comfortable move, but I don't really have a lot of choice. Okay, we're all set. So this is a short runway, it's just over 500 meters. It's largely downhill. We can only see the first third or so before it dips down. We do have a mountain in front of us, so we will be turning, doing a very slight left turn, and you can see on our navigational aid that actually we need to be turning back on ourselves. So I'll climb up to 12,000 feet before doing that initial turn to the first to the airway. Okay, ready to go, holding on the brakes. Bring the engines up to takeoff power. Make sure we have full power and then release. Gear up, and we run out of runway really quickly on this one. And we can bring the autopilot in. That will hold the pitch and the wings level and give us our initial climb. Just open up the instrumentation now. And there we have a slight problem. I'm just going to disengage the autopilot. Now, one thing I can say very, very safely is there's no chance of a return back to Couchervel. So at this point we are going to get it into the best climb, which I think is probably about 80 knots or so. And just close the engine. So I'm just trimming for about, it's a little low, it needs to be about 80 knots I think. And there's a valley there. Just looking at our options here, we do know there's not a lot of other airfields. In fact, I can safely say there's really, I think there's one other, but it's a similar sort of hairy approach to Couchervel. There's nothing to the right there. Now there's two alarms. One is the engine fire alarm. Let's just have a look on the outside. And yeah, it looks like the fire has gone out, but we're left without an engine. So there's not a huge number of options in the area. I was expecting that to happen a little later. Yeah, there's no way we're going to make that. In fact, the other thing is that we don't really want to be landing on a mountain. We want to look for somewhere that is in the valley, somewhere that we can actually be rescued if we need it. It's quite challenging, this, because we are just surrounded with mountains. Now that other alarm is because we're low speed without the gear down, but the gear is like an air brake and I absolutely do not want to be using that. The other thing to mention, obviously, how this aircraft got its certification is with the ballistic parachute. That is really a last resort. I don't want to be pulling that here because I might end up on a mountain top or just crashing into a mountain. That's not really very desirable. So at the moment I am using the terrain. I can see, if you look at if I just zoom in a minute, see where the aircraft is there. If I follow that valley, and we'll follow it more or less sort of northwest. There's not really a lot around here. I mean, there's some areas to the left there, green areas that we could go into, but we'll just circle there a moment. Don't want to lose too much height. No, it's not really suitable. It's quite mountainous still. So the main problem is the area that I might be able to put this aircraft down into will be straight ahead. And obviously I can't really see what's straight ahead there. just mountains and trees both sides. That's really not a good place to land. So we're going straight ahead. That's definitely the plan. Now what I can do is just lower the nose very briefly. Okay, and I can see there's a little bit of civilization down the valley there. Now you see, see here where the valley breaks off to the left and right. Got a choice really, whether I fly straight on or fly to the right. But that seems to come to a dead end. So I'm gonna go straight really in the northwest route. And actually, just looking down there, it does look a little bit inhospitable. There's nowhere flat to put down, really. So as I say, the ballistic parachute is a worst case scenario. Let's just have another peek. Just point the nose down very slightly. Yeah, it's not brilliant, but there's more options there. Now, normally what we'd do, having chosen a landing area, which we haven't done yet, which is a little bit disconcerting, is to plan for the approach, and that's going to be a little challenging because we've got mountains both sides. Normally, you would be able to circle to lose altitude. I just don't have that option. Let's keep a lookout. What are we coming to here? There's not really anything there. There's mountains outside. There's an area of green to the left, but there's power lines. I mean, if I absolutely have to, I'll pull the ballistic parachute, but want to try to get us to maximise my options, really. Certainly don't want to be doing it at this point. Yeah, it's really tempting there on the right, but still that's quite steep, and there's power lines just before it. No, I'm going to continue. Now we're heading for a mountain here, so I'm just going to do that just temporarily to have a quick peek below. And my goodness, that's quite steep. Really nothing on the left or right. Does glide well, that's one thing. Getting pretty low here, so we're starting to run out of options. So I'm hoping for a 20,000 foot runway just around the corner, but I know it's not going to be anything like that, so I'm just trying to avoid the mountains at this point. Let's see if I can lift up. Yeah, see the road, the way that weaves around the mountain. So we're going to be putting down somewhere here. really run out of options. I can see an area of green straight ahead. Just there. That's really not ideal. There's actually an area there, but I think there's power lines running through it. Man. Tell me about it. Okay, let's put the gear down. It's got rid of one of the alarms, so you see what I mean about the power lines. Oh, this is not going to be elegant. Let's put a little bit of flap in. Oh my god, I just realised there's a power line going across. This is like a nightmare. Oh my god. Right. Under the other power lines. Oh, jeez. Oh, Jesus, what? Brakes on. Breathe. That wasn't quite as planned, but we made it. I think I made it under there. My goodness, look at that. It's just like a power line frenzy, this place. Obviously it's very, very difficult to see the actual lines. You can see the pylon towers, but that was fairly hairy coming underneath that one. Let's tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the camera up here as an innocent bystander, and we'll just have a look at a replay. Oh my goodness. Run! So, my question is, do I make it under the pylons? Because it wouldn't trigger a crash. Yes, I think I did. Oh my god. Some cars have pulled up. Think, what in hell? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put that down to a success because it didn't trigger a crash, and I didn't use the ballistic parachute. Now, imagine if I got over that area of green and pulled that, and we ended up in a power line. I think it would have been a different outcome. So, as I say, I didn't know when that was going to occur. It did occur just after takeoff, and we stretched the glide as far as possible because there wasn't really any viable option nearby. With hindsight, the initial bit of the flight, I'm just going to go back to it and we'll just go into an outside view. So just there, that area just down there, I probably, with hindsight, probably would have used that area in circle. There's more options. There's not as such extreme terrain both sides. I mean, it's not fantastic, but I probably would have had a slightly better choice there than continuing down the valley. But that's what I did. It could have been worse. There could have been a cloud cover. In which case my strategy would have been to use the satellite navigation to find the valley, and obviously there's nothing I can really do until I'm below the cloud, and hoping to break clear of the cloud with some height to decide to pull the parachute or land. Why you don't pull the parachute? Well, you are completely out of control at that point. I think unless you've got a catastrophic problem, you're way better just pursuing a normal forced landing. This aircraft does glide well. You're really safer landing on the main undercarriage in a field or whatever on a road than just pulling the chute, because you have no option. If you end up over a power line, well, let's not go down that route. But that's what I wanted to say. There was a sort of happy ending, maybe not so much for the aircraft, but I think we would have survived that, and we got to at least save the parachute. So thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.